All right, emergency PoddyC time. It's episode 28, but it's an emergency. We've got new affixes. We've got some affixes going away. We've got
Warning.
some affixes getting added,
Poddy
and
surprise.
we've got a special guest as well. We've got the one and only J.B joining us to discuss these affixes, known for thought out, reasonable takes, non-inflammatory on all things. Really help mellow out the podcast.
I already said hi to these guys one time tonight. I'm not doing it again, just so you
All
guys
right,
are
well,
aware.
yeah, well, screw you too, JB. I was about to say some very nice things about you too. I was about to say like, yeah, for those of you guys who don't know, JB's like, VOG M plus content creator, but you're just some old guy now who complains.
Well, you did it. You did end up saying that. He is an OG. He's a multiple-time MDI competitor. He's an MDI land champion. He's one of the few teams to win an MDI, and he has been, I think, one of the most OG like Mythic Plus streamers and content creators and
Yeah,
personalities.
he was like the first person I watched.
Yeah, everybody gets it. I'm old.
Oh yeah. Oh, also there's an and Fronk will put this in the YouTube video. He likes doing this. There is a WoW documentary of JB, like the Race to World First about Blood Legion, and there's like a cutaway of him. They do him really dirty. Like he's in a closet, his bathroom closet gaming, and he's got the worst posture of all time. And they zoom out little by little and they show the posture, and then you realize he's in a closet, and then you realize he's in a bathroom closet, and then it's like, holy crap. But he does look really young and spry in that though, so that was hype.
A
Lot of hair,
just
too.
making this podcast. To
You did
shut
have
up,
hair.
JB.
You did. He had a
Yep.
lot of hair. All right, cool. So nice little potty surprise from us today. We are here to talk to you about affixes because Blizzard has released a post that has left a bit of us confused. And I'll start with my initial confusion. I think everyone here, maybe not, but JB, were you in the like little alpha thing? Like you could play alpha for a few days?
Yep.
Okay. So did you go to either of those Q&As that they
Yeah.
had for us? Okay. So we weren't supposed to refer to them, but then they were transcribed by some people, so I feel comfortable talking about them now. They were asked a question about affixes in both Q&As, and both times they were like, the key level changes we did in Season 4 are all we plan on doing for affixes in the War Within. Deliberately said this. They were like, we're not doing this. We're happy with affixes, or maybe not we're happy, but like, we don't plan on doing any major changes. And then they post this, which means they were either completely making that up then, because these are massive changes, right? Or that specific person didn't know. So I think they like kind of just made this up in like the last couple weeks. I think this is like a response to maybe people
I think
feeling
they
like,
didn't know.
you think they were doing this the whole time?
Yeah, like I think those guys just like weren't aware of this level of change.
Okay.
I don't know. I think these affixes. How do I put this nicely? I think one could have come up with these affixes in 25 minutes. With
Yeah.
a,
Yeah,
in a
that's what
bad
I
document.
think. I think they just YOLO'd them. I don't even really know where to start. What's your all's like initial before we like dig deep into like each specific part? Because I think there are two main parts. Like there's the Kiss Curse thing, right? And that's separate from like the affixes they decided to bring back. And they were like, let's keep affixes simple and more about the dungeons. Then they kept the most difficult and hard affixes and they got rid of all the simple ones. But what was your all's initial impression after reading this today?
Well, so before this too, I just want to say like, Ion talked about this before. Mr. Ion Hazzikostas.
It's
I remember
Ian,
one of the
right?
interviews. Whatever, same shit. But when one of the guys asked Mr. Ion about Kiss Curse Affixes, he said something along the lines of they weren't planning on doing this because going up in key levels and having affixes is supposed to make the key harder, not easier. And this kind of just like goes back
Oh,
on that whole
true.
philosophy. Like you guys remember this, right? I think it was like back in season 1 maybe or 2.
Yeah, but we all
Where they talked about this.
Yeah, but we all said, I think they said, yeah, we don't want like affixes being added to a key, but now the key is easier because certain classes do more damage. But all of us were like, who cares? Because the levels at which those were added were so inconsequential, right? That it just didn't feel like, oh, okay, an old 9 is now going to be harder than a 10 just barely. Like, who cares? So maybe they
That was
went-
true in some seasons as well, right? Like, you guys remember doing Mechagon Workshop without Awakened Portals and then with it? Like, that key got easier when the level went up.
Yep.
Yeah. But you are right. I didn't think about that, Dorky. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an interesting shift in philosophy or like how they approach affixes or M plus as a whole.
I feel like there's a lot of stuff that Blizzard like kind of doesn't want to do, and then they sometimes come up with a reason to explain why that's not their actual reason. I think that was Kiss Curse as well. It's just like they kind of didn't want to do it. I don't think that because I think you're right. Like, you know, I think that rationale wasn't like a huge driving factor. I think they just didn't really want to do it, and now they're trying it. But like the fact that a 4 is going to be marginally easier than a 3, I'm not even sure that'll be true with these affixes.
I do think it's a good point that this seems to run counter to every stated like intent that Blizzard has had with Mythic Plus. Ian did come out and say we intend affixes to make keys harder. That was the whole point of his statement, was like affixes are supposed to make keys more difficult. That's the whole point of affixes. And then we did on that Q&A we had, the guys that were talking about it said like, yeah, we have no intention to like cook with affixes. We like where that's at, and we're not planning on bringing back like seasonal affixes or anything like that. We're working on other stuff. And then we get this. And I truly believe Blizzard has no agenda when it comes to Mythic Plus. It just feels like they just shoot from the hip.
That's so true.
Seasons.
Dude,
and
JB, so right.
Yeah, I don't think they're lying to us or making stuff up. I just think I don't know that there's any particular direction that Mythic Plus has. It just seems to be driven by whim, and season to season they're like, yeah, you guys think we should do
let's
something?
do this. Let's try this.
Which I actually don't think that's inherently a bad thing either, like to kind of do some experimenting with it. You know, it's Mythic Plus is now a system that is getting on 10 years old or something. Like, try something.
Holy, 10 years? Has it really been that long?
It's 8 or something, but it's getting close.
It has been, yeah. Even 8 years feels crazy.
I think that if you look in this post, I think the stated goals here are really admirable too. It's like we want to shift the source of the challenge to the dungeon itself by simplifying affix design and emphasizing creature abilities. Great. Reduce visual noise, nameplate clutter, and coggy load. Great.
I like that a lot. You know,
allow for varied and context-specific gameplay decisions depending on the dungeon they're applied to. Also a great goal. I don't really see what these affixes are doing to do that, but that sounds like some good words, probably. So
it sounds like good words for sure.
I don't know. The affix, like I think that the goal is cool. These specific affixes just strike me as like weird, but maybe it's just fine. Like, I think you're going to be able to ignore these on a lot of weeks almost entirely, and they're replacing a row of affixes that you couldn't ignore on a lot of weeks. So I think that's going to make M+ better. I don't know.
I mean, it's like let's not get that part twisted. The affixes they kept are not good.
Yeah.
Well, so we're talking about two different things.
Right. It's like obviously it would have been better if they'd replaced the level 7 affixes instead of the level 4 affixes. But either one of those is, I think, a dub if you're replacing one of those rows with like nothing burgers. Because now instead of 2 affixes from those categories, like we just have the 1, right? It's still better.
Yeah. I think there's 2 distinct parts of this. I think there's like the broad philosophy change of like, hey, we want, and we'll get into whether they're actually going to accomplish this with these things, but they want the meta to be different every week of like what the best classes are for a dungeon. Now, obviously, Demon Hunter and Og exist. Obviously, I don't think any of these would really change your tank selection. So like, is that even happening is one thing, but they are removing a few things by doing this in general. And we can talk about the effectiveness of those changes in a second, but like, I think definitely rest in piss to storming. It is great that has gone forever. Just like a small thing. Like especially for tanks, Dorki. I know you always were like, this is so hard to like
annoying as hell. Yeah,
it like turns frontals around and stuff. Really, really annoying for melee. But one thing that I thought was interesting is you mentioned a stated goal they had. They were like, we want to simplify affixes, and we want the difficulty to be more in the hands of the dungeons. And something that I find weird is I think people already think dungeons are doing too much, but maybe they're not actually adding things to dungeons even though they're taking affixes away here. Maybe they're just keeping it the same, and it's more of just a shift philosophically. And the other one is, it's crazy to say like we want to simplify affixes. We want affixes to like matter less, whatever, and have it be more about the dungeons. But then they're removing things like volcanic and what was the other, really entangling, right? But then they're keeping like really, really impactful, hard to deal with meta-defining things like bolstering and sanguine and raging.
Don't
right?
say it.
And they buffed how many weeks of the year are going to have bolstering and sanguine. Right?
Every week.
Those have gone from
Every single
those
week.
have gone from 2 out of 5 to 2 out of 4.
Correct. Every
affixes
single
on that
week
row.
will have raging, bolstering,
This hurts so bad.
sanguine,
Stop.
or
Or bursting. Or bursting.
no,
You can play that
he
week.
said stop.
Just imagine an entire
He said stop.
season. We're just playing Raging Week, Bolstering Week, Sanguine Week, Raging Week, Bolstering Week.
No, there's bursting weeks in there.
He said
There's
to stop.
bursting in there.
I didn't
So you
mention
just wait.
bursting
Okay, we can
because
play
he
once
requested
every-
that I stop.
You just
Yeah.
wait
Okay,
until
go on.
you wait until it's bursting plus your spec, damage buff week. That happens once out of every 20 weeks in the calendar, right? And then you play that week.
Oh, that's so
That's
bad.
like, poggers.
I gave some thought to like what dictated which affixes they kept, and which ones they didn't, independent of like their stated goals. Because while their stated goals sounded nice, it was also like not specific at all. I feel like it didn't actually give any clear guidelines as to how they were getting rid of and keeping affixes or whatever. I feel like the affixes they got rid of were affixes that added mechanics to the dungeon. So Incorp, Afflicted require you to dispel or CC. Entangling required you to like break out of a thing. Storming required you to dodge. Spiteful required you to dodge stuff. The stuff they kept is all stuff that's like sort of passive. Like bolstering is not a new mechanic. Like you don't have to play any differently really. Like dodge stuff. It's just some mobs get beefier the longer they live. Same deal with bursting. Stuff dies. You need to heal it, but it doesn't add mechanically like something you're doing. It felt like what they kept was designed to be the more passive affixes that you didn't really have to like keep track of stuff in the game, mobs or mechanics going on. It was just stuff that happens when things die or whatnot. Unfortunately, it turns out that those are some of the most cancerous affixes in the game.
They are by far the worst.
I think you're right. Yeah, like they took out all the ones that have animations, right? And they just left the ones that basically don't. Like, I mean, I guess bursting plays a little thing when something dies, but for the most part, those you could forget about, right? Or you could not see them. Whereas entangling is like a big green circle, and Corpse, Spiteful, Storming, Afflicted are all like things that spawn in the dungeon. And they've lobbed those, so
Yeah,
yeah.
that part makes sense.
yeah.
Do you guys think that? So I stated this already, where like they introduced those new level 4 affixes, and they did it with the intention of changing the meta every week. Do you guys actually, regardless of whether that will actually happen or not, do you think that's their intention, or do you think it's more along the lines of what Dratnos says, where they're just kind of going to be less impactful than what old level 4s used to be?
I feel like this is just gatekeeping rather than, because like it would have been fine if they kept the part where it's like, oh, these mobs now have reduced armor or take increased damage from X elemental damage, but the fact that they also shit on people who like the one with that where it reflects the physical damage dealers, right? Like, why have that specifically for physical damage dealers? It's just like a straight up fuck you to those types of classes.
I think the thing that Blizzard is targeting with these new affixes is pugging specifically. And when we talk about the meta sort of manifests itself in two ways. You have the like rank 1 pushers who the meta is the only thing they play. Like they try to figure out the meta and then play those specs, and then that trickles down. And I don't think Blizzard is even attempting to do anything with the rank 1 meta. Those players are going to figure out what the best specs are. They're going to play those, and you're going to lock in. It's like you pick your spec, you figure out what's good, you play that. What I think Blizzard is aiming for is the pugging community, which takes its cue from rank 1 players, and then that meta moves its way down in LFG. But that part is mutable. You can impact because you're taking different players each time. You don't have the same 5 people showing up to key. You're picking up guys out of the looking for group queue. And so if you can give incentives to bring other things each week other than just God Comp, because I think Blizzard has essentially thrown in the towel on the idea of God Comp. I think they've just conceded that like that's going to be a thing that exists with the way that we tune this game. There's just always going to be like 5 best things. People are going to play them. How can we break that up in pugging specifically? And these affixes are a way to say, look, there's going to be a big enough change from week to week that it makes sense that you're going to bring a spec that would not normally show up. But if the only thing that you have to pick from is specs you see in LFG, and you know that some of them are going to be hitting like a truck this week, bring those.
Yeah. Oh, I was also mistaken about the whole reflect thing. So this actually reflects physical damage from any attacker. So I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's
but
not
yeah,
just a
so
tank, yeah.
in this context, if we were to throw in God comp, would we even change God comp? I'm actually curious about that.
With these numbers, no. So it's really interesting when I looked at it. It was like, okay, if their intention is to like give certain classes like a week to shine, I guess, right? Kind of like what you said. I don't think this is going to change that. So obviously Demon Hunter does every damage type. Og can just buff the 2 things that you bring that are good that week. So like 2 DPS spots maybe don't change. I don't think any of them make you want to bring a different tank or a healer, right? So 4 out of the 5 things wouldn't change with current game design, so it'd be a 5th one. I almost wonder why they didn't even just do what they mean to do, which is just make each affix say like, hey, warriors do 15% increased damage this week, and so do rogues, and because that's what I think they're trying to do. But
Yeah.
That does give that, yeah.
But like they're not actually accomplishing it. So like I don't know. What's up, Dratnos?
They
Also,
should put the tier set names on each of the weeks and just buff those specs.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's only trash enemies either with or without a mana bar. Like, first of all, those two aren't equal, right? There are way more enemies without mana bars than with mana bars, usually in dungeons. There are a lot of pulls that don't include any mana bars, so you'd be getting full value there. But, you know, there are only a few pulls that have, like, multiple mana bar havers. So that's, like, a weird discrepancy between them. But also, like, I don't know, like, you're talking about doing 10% more shadow damage to a specific subset of mobs. Like, is that ever changing your decision? If that's ever changing your decision enough to tip like a spec over the edge, then it would mean you're never bringing it on the other weeks where they're not getting that buff and somebody else is, right? So like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's weird. Like, I think you're right that the pug psychology thing is probably the biggest possible upside here. Is like, it's not that it would actually be rational to do anything based on these affixes. It's your hope that you're kind of getting into pug group leaders' heads and getting them to like stop being such jerks and actually invite some random person that's playing an off-meta spec, and maybe it'll have that desired effect, but it certainly won't be through the pathway of it being like the right way to time the key.
Yeah. Also,
let's also take a look at the negative effects of some of these. Some of them are awful.
Yeah, miss me with playing fortified minus armor week as
well,
a tank.
fortified. That's another thing. Does fortified and Tyrant still exist?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they said at the bottom of this post that. Hang on, let me find the text.
It seemed kind of up in the air to me.
We're still experimenting with how fortified. So under the words tyrannical and fortified, they said we're still experimenting with how these affixes fit in with our updates. So I guess maybe they are open to lobbing them, but as of this build, they're still in.
Okay.
Yeah, like over here it says +2 is still fortified and tyrant.
Yeah. So I don't know.
So
But yeah, like this focused one. Oh yeah, go ahead, Max.
well, I was gonna kind of diverge a little bit. I want you to finish your thought.
Okay, yeah, like this focused one, non-boss enemies with mana have 30% increased haste. Why don't they just call this like the Tindril affix, where mobs just become Tindril and just start machine gunning mechanics?
Well, also, like, I find that really weird because, like, the whole non-boss enemies or whatever, that's also harder to control. Like, because, like, yeah, you can, like, silence an enemy with a mana bar and they effectively do nothing to you, right? Like, them having the haste, like, doesn't... I guess the haste affects their melee speed as well, I guess. So, like, silencing them would still make them hit you harder. You know, there are some mobs
well,
like
but
that.
then it's Raging Week, and then suddenly it's despair.
Which, it's, by the way, it's Raging Week 1 out of 4 weeks, so 25% of the time. But then, I don't know, you have... The other one is, like, you're just going to get absolutely pissed on as a tank. Like, the 20% less armor, and then it's affecting, like,
yeah, that is both
90% of mobs. Where, like, if a mob has 30% extra haste, that also increases the need for stops. And while something that like, we've talked about a lot of Mythic Plus is, like, we want less stops in dungeons. We want stops to matter. It's a chicken before the egg thing, right? Like, why do stops matter so much now? Because there's so many mechanics on things. Well, why do you think there's so many mechanics in dungeons? It's to make all the stops in the game that you have access to make sense and have the reason to use them, right? So I just wonder how that's going to work, because, like, imagine, like, being a DH where you're in a heavy caster pull and they have 30% haste versus being like a warrior. Like, you're just fucking dead, right? Like, I don't know. That seems like such a such a weird thing to play around. What I wanted to ask you guys, by the way, was... okay, I saw a tweet earlier, and it's been living in my head. What do you guys think Blizzard... what kind of a reaction do you think Blizzard expected when they posted this today? If you're a dungeon change maker, do you expect this to go live and you're, like, gritting your teeth, bracing for impact? Or are you, like, people are going to like these changes?
I think they think people like these changes. It's like when Goku says, "You're gonna love this one."
I think the person who's responsible for these changes doesn't read anything about the community's reaction to Mythic Plus.
That's what I think. I think there's two options. There's either Blizzard thinks that us getting bursting, bolstering, raging, and sanguine back instead of the affixes that don't do anything is a good thing. Or they think that we don't think that's a good thing, and they think that they're right, and we just don't know any better. Which, there are times where you're making games, and the gamers genuinely don't know what they want, and, you know, a lot of great games are made that way, right? There's obviously a history of WoW of us saying we want them to do things, and that, like, obviously covenants and just everything where it's like, hey, please don't do this, and they're like, no, you don't get it. You actually will like this, and we're like, no, and then we didn't, right? But, like, I wonder which one that is in this scenario. I wonder if they... because they're both kind of bad in a way, I think. One is they think that we like this, and I think everyone at all key levels likes affixes the closer they get to not interacting with you at all, which is actually, interestingly, alongside their stated design goals. And then there's... or is it this scenario where they think they know better than we do? And I just don't know which one it is.
I will say, just sort of piggybacking off that, one thing about this that I guess maybe is I find most frustrating is we just had a fucking season 4 that was a throwaway season where you could have done all of this shit, and then in an environment where people would have like welcomed it. If it seemed weird, you would have been like, well, okay, but that's the point of season 4. You're supposed to try out weird shit.
But they didn't have this planned. Right?
Yeah,
I'm saying
that
though
does
is like,
further add support for the idea that this was like a new idea.
Yep.
like this if they'd have just done this, if they'd have brought this energy to season 4, this could have been their like free pass. Could have done whatever you wanted. People would have been like, oh, it's season 4. That's the whole point of season 4. And then you could have had like, you could have ironed all this out and then brought in the like actually good stuff. This, you know, you separated the wheat from the chaff, and then at the beginning of War Within, you've got like fully cooked stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the most optimistic take is like, the stated design goals are good. We like that. There's been a lot of times in WoW's history where the stated design goals are bad and stupid, like they were with Covenants or whatever, and that's a much harder fight to win than when you agree on the goal and you just disagree on whether their design is gonna, you know, actually accomplish the goal that they want. And it is still like beta, right? So like, I think the best possible case here is like, this is a new idea. This is the cook they had for it last Thursday, and over the course of the next few weeks of beta, they can make some good changes to like, all right, we'll bring back in entangling and we'll replace bolstering or whatever, and you know we'll change it. We're divorcing from the idea that the level 7 row has to like be all on death affixes, and now we're gonna do some community favorite low impact affixes there, and we're tweaking these level 4 passive affixes to be slightly less problematic in exactly how they're implemented, and bang, great season available. But definitely, if they're just lobbing this and then gonna forget it, I think it is a shame, because I agree that a season 4 would have been a alternative to beta for testing these things. It
was being encouraged as an option going into season 4. It's like, this is the season. I mean, we have proof too. Like, there were a lot of things they tried in season 4 of Shadowlands, successful to you or not, that patch, but like, there were things that they tried that they applied to the game and made sense. You didn't know that you wanted, like, you didn't know exactly what you wanted in the game, but then you saw Dinars and you're like, that's it. That's the thing, a little bit of that we need in the patch. Like, even just seeing it, if it worked or if it didn't work, where it's like, you get ideas for how to make the base game better. And I feel like they just didn't do quite enough of that. In fact, one change that I think that I also want your all's take on is farming Mythic Plus dungeons for Aspect Crests, especially if you're starting late, kind of feels like doing islands in BFA. It's just like the thing you have to do to get this resource that you need. And in Season 4, you are doing 1 affix keys at a level 6, and now going into the War Within, to farm Aspect Crest, you're going to have to do 3 10% multiplicatively scaled keys higher than that. And also you will have 2 affixes, correct? Wasn't that change also announced? That's 4 and 7s instead of 10s for the second affix. And I just wonder what kind of impact that will have on a lot of players.
Oh yeah, the 4 and 7 shit fucking sucks.
Because
Like,
you were
remember how
saying
we
that.
Yeah, we had podcast episodes, right? Where we were saying how like, oh,
You were saying how
absolutely
nice it
owns when you
was.
could just
You were like, this is
yeah,
so
like
fucking
just
good.
do plus 9s and you get like your vaults done and you don't have to fucking worry about getting that extra third affix when you're just doing your plus 9 keys. And suddenly they just decided like, oh nope, I mean, people weren't doing the plus 10s with the third affix. Let's just make them plus 7.
Yeah, I wonder
instead.
why. Oh, God.
I wonder why. It's like they had such a good thing and they decided to just fuck it all over. Like, I will say one thing, though. If these affixes would be nice if they didn't have the dungeons so... What's the word? Complicated or, like, you know, complex? There's just too much going on in dungeons, and if you're trying to do, like, say, Ultimate, for example, everyone's always complaining about, like, how Ultimate is just overloaded with mechanics. Mobs have, like, 2 mechanics each, and everything just, like, fucks your tank and healer. If these dungeons didn't have so much going on, I think these affixes would be kind of welcome and okay, but because they're so dangerous and how, like, every single one of these affixes just have so much impact, it just adds to it. It's like a multiplicative effect. Like, I'm looking at the Tindral affix, for example. This would be fine if the mobs weren't just like chain casting all these. Yeah, I'm calling this the Tindral affix, bad, because this shit is literally Tindraling. It's like the mobs just go Super Saiyan on your ass.
Dude, yeah,
And,
imagine like upper floor Ruby Life pools with.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly that example, like Cinderbolts, right? They're already
Yeah.
casting at like 1 second per Cinderbolts, and they're chain casting them without any lockout.
It also makes kicks,
If-
which is in pugs, like kicks are a lot harder to get.
Yep.
And I feel like kicks being 30% faster is definitely going to have a massive effect on there. Or do you think they also are like, hey, maybe you should bring a rogue and a warlock this week so you can have numbing poison or curse of tongues or something, and like now this
Nah, those
matters
aren't
so much more.
Shit, man.
Or like, here's one piece of utility that hasn't been good in M+ before, but Sigil of Silence I think would be pretty good against that, and that would be a way to kind of let them
Oh, that'd be
incentivize
very
you to
nice.
play
That would be good
yeah.
on that, yeah.
Yeah.
JB, what do you? I have another question after this, but what are your general thoughts on that?
I mean, I think slowly been coming around to the idea in Mythic Plus that I think live keys should be less sweaty. I actually think Blizzard has made their own bed now with Mythic Plus, where they introduced like their own in-game IO score. They have pushed the community to care about timing keys and pushing higher. Like their own systems have encouraged this, have encouraged the formation of strict metas. When you deplete a key, it goes down in levels. So the community is going to really care about timing the key, because if you don't, you have to play it back up. Like, it really matters to a lot of people for several reasons that you are successful when you do a key. And I think the vibes in Mythic Plus would be much more chill if there was less emphasis placed on succeeding. If it was just like, the point of this key is to go in and have fun. Like, if you time it, there's not a huge, you don't deplete the key, you can just go again. If you complete the key, I think the system worked just fine when there was a third-party site that had its own rating system, and if you wanted to know what your score was, you could go look at Radar.io and come up with it, but there wasn't something in-game that was telling you, hey, by the way, you suck if you aren't 3,500 or whatever. And I think adding that part into the game made people care more and bred even more toxicity than existed previous to that. And I think if they got rid of the depletion system so that you didn't feel so fucking bad when you depleted a key, if it was just go again, like, that's fine, guys. I think it would make the pugging experience much more enjoyable. There'd be way less people digging at each other. Right now, a lot of these pugs, it feels like you're just playing until you wipe and everyone's preparing to blame somebody else. Like, that's the whole key, is you're waiting until you wipe and you all have your pre-planned excuses ready, and as soon as one guy dies, the tank already has his message pre-typed out, slams enter, and is like, fuck you, healer, you suck. And then
It's always
leaves
the
key.
AUG for me.
Okay, I don't
It's always
believe that,
it's always the AUG for me.
Yeah.
No matter
I
what
don't
happens,
see
it's
people
on them.
blaming healers nearly as much nowadays, unless maybe it's JB because like there's a good reason.
All right, we need to bring that shit back. Let's talk about that for a second. The healer. There used to be a certain level of healer hate that was consistent and tolerated, and it's gone down, and we need to bring that shit back. Right, JB?
I think as well, this phenomenon, like you're talking about it in like pug push keys, but I think the fact that you get less than half of your crests if you deplete causes this to also exist in like you're pugging a +7, you're pugging a +4, like that. They really need to make that less punishing.
When you time a 45-minute key rather than like an easy +9, you should get proportionate aspect crest for that. And how come right when you deplete, which means you spent even more time trying to accomplish said goal, why are you penalized by not hitting it, right?
It sucks, right? Like if you're in a group that could maybe do a 12, could maybe do an 11, could probably do a 10, and could definitely do a 9, you get way more aspect crest by spamming those 9s rather than like pushing yourself and trying the harder keys and maybe failing. Like that is incredibly unfortunate.
Yeah, it's rewarding you
incentive.
for playing it safe. Yeah. It's horrible.
No, you know what's a good idea? Incentivizing bringing bad specs. Like, bro, just imagine for a second if you just bring your poor Ellie Shaman friend out of pity.
What, you get like 3 times as many aspect crests?
Yeah, you get 3 times as many aspects.
You get that. No, you get extra flight stones whenever you're doing a score for somebody, which it's always going to be for an Ellie Shaman. So.
Yeah, but oh god damn, I mean.
See, they actually have that system in the game too, like with the old PvP stuff from BFA, or I think they brought that forward even. But it was like if you played the less played faction, you got like more shit for it. And they should do the same system, but for specs. If you play with an underplayed spec, everybody's rewards for the key just go up. You just get fire on your flight
imagine
stones.
if you're like a group leader and you decide to invite Ellie Shaman, Pharaoh Druid, and like Survival Hunter and like a Holy Priest. Then you get like big bonus. You're just getting like 40 aspects per run. That would incentivize the hell out of people to invite all these dogshit specs.
I have something else for you, but I did just read a YouTube comment that I want to share with you. This guy says, us Augs accept the hate, and we will still buff you and save you from one-shots. We take on the sins and hate. So a very, very good message from the Aug representative there. But I actually wanted to ask you guys whether this was a Season 4 cook, like JB said, where it would be more accepted, or what would happen if they just did this at the beginning of an expansion. Let's say they did these level 4 affixes like correctly, where it did make 5 different specs technically the best. By how much? Let's just leave that up for interpretation. But let's just say that like whatever the best 5 specs are in a dungeon, whatever the god comp is that week does change. And there are 4 weeks like that, or 8 weeks or whatever. But like every week, different classes are technically the best. How do you guys feel like that would impact the game? Is that because like let's again remove the fact that these 4 affixes don't do that. We've already discussed that, you know, AUG, DH, tank, healers, whatever. Let's just say it does do that. A different tank, a different healer, 3 new DPS are good every week. Is that good or bad for the game, and why?
Okay, so for high level, I think, like strictly speaking, for the high level, we're going to be seeing a whole lot more multi-specking required. Like, if that was a reality. In fact, I was actually just talking about this with my TGP team when we were doing some practice. We were like, dude, imagine next TGP where, like, you had to fucking have, like, a different spec for every single set of affixes. That'd be crazy.
I actually think that would be sick if that was, like if the way to min
I would not mind
the
it personally.
ultra high-end keys was like that. I think that would be really cool. Again, these affixes don't do that, but I think that would be a really cool... And the affixes might be close enough where it's like, oh, my mage should play Arcane on this week, right? Like that. I think these affixes are maybe at the level where you'd make that decision in some fortified keys with the way they're currently written, which is kind of cool. It's also maybe currently at the level where it's like, oh, like maybe my Guardian Druid plays Druid of the Claw on bleed damage week, and maybe they play Lunar Bear on Arcane damage week. Like maybe these are close enough where you're going to make some decisions on the margins off of them at the high end. But if it was a little bit more than that, if it was like, yeah, this comp is probably like, half a key the best this week, and then this other comp is now the best by half a key level in that week, like that sounds kind of cool to me for high end pushing. Like, you can still just play with your one group and your
It
one
would be
comp,
fine,
and then you
yeah.
just have it. You'd have like a different best week than another group, and you'd maybe have an argument where it's like, well, they got the raging week and we got the bolstering week, blah blah blah. Like, I don't care. I feel like the coolness of that would outweigh the downsides there. But yeah, I don't know. It is, I think, a cool hypothetical.
Well, it depends on how much too, right? So like,
Yeah, I think if it's more than like half a key level, we got a problem.
yeah, exactly. Because like I see a lot of people in chat kind of being like, no, because then there's like 3 weeks where you can't play. Well, it's like, well, you could absolutely play, right? If it's done correctly. I think if it's like, oh, well, warriors do 30% more damage this week, it's okay. You can't compete with a 30% damage increase. If it's done to a level to where, that class is slightly technically better, those classes would feel, because like there's two dueling things. It's the feeling of, well, I can only mythic plus 1 out of every 4 weeks, which is bad, versus the, well, at least my spec gets 1 week now where there's a 35 out of 39 chance, or 34 out of 39 chance that I won't get invited any week right now, right? So it's like it spreads it out. Like that's the dueling philosophies you have. I also think the whole, like I've seen some responses to it where they're like, okay, just design the game better. Just design it closer. I think Dragonflight has actually been a pretty good test as to like, that's completely fucking impossible. So
No, that's not true. I mean, season one.
I'm gonna use that as an example. So like season 1 and the beginning of season 2. So before AUG, right? I think we're arguably the most balanced this game has ever been. Actually, I don't even think it's arguable. At least as far as like what classes could be brought to a key or to raid, I actually think that is true. At least in raid, it's true.
Yeah, I'll DM you a page you can pull up if you want to like show the graph down.
What is this?
How beautiful it is in season 1, the Mythic Stats site.
It's gonna be kind of hard to show, but what is? And this is set to season 1.
If you scroll all the way down, you'll find season 1. You can see where AUG gets added to the
worse
game.
and worse.
It's pretty incredible.
This is
God, it was beautiful. in
either
season
something
one.
is
Look how
wrong
green
with
it
the
is.
formatting of this, or I'm like extremely stupid.
So how green it is shows like how.
Oh, yeah. It's like if you scroll all the way down to the bottom. Let me see.
Dude, something
post
here
it
is
in,
my format
Oh,
is
yeah, this is
wrong.
Just as,
You have like a dark mode thing that's bricking it or something. Yeah.
Oh, let's see. And also my camera's huge. I can fix that. Oh my god. Yep, dark mode thing's bricking it. It's fucking hallelujah. That is. Let me move my camera down.
Look at the colors here on in season 1, and then see if you can see where AUG gets added to the game up in season 2.
So Dragonflight season 1, you can see the classes that are what exactly is this used to depict? It's
This is like the top runs, so it's not great for. I mean, it does correlate pretty well with like +10s and stuff as well, +15s, but it is looking at the top like 2,000 runs, I think, of each week.
Yeah. So
you just look at the right and how green it is. Green indicates
green
that it's
good.
like, diverse.
And then it's like
Yeah,
AUG
and
gets
red
added to the game,
indicates
and then look at this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just only 1 tank, only 1 healer, exactly 3 DPS specs, and then ever
But the
since
thing
then,
is, you
it's
can't just
been
blame
worse than that.
AUG because like.
Yes, you can.
Well, no, though. I mean, even if AUG didn't exist, it would still be that fucked.
It would still be that fucked, except for the 5th spot.
It would just
in
be a
group.
different DPS. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Or even if you split AUG into, let's just say, in the most favorable scenario, an equal representation of every other DPS spec in the game, it would still be 10 times worse than anything else, right?
Right.
So yeah, you can definitely see that. But my thing is like, I think even when the game is as balanced as it could possibly be, which you would argue in this expansion, there still is like classes people gravitate towards, and like there is a theoretical like best group. That's true in season 1. It's true in season 2 with God Comp. The like how much better it is in the second thing a lot of times doesn't even matter. I remember some seasons you would do the MDI, which is like completely unrelatable to like live keys, and you would see the MDI actually shift people's perception as to what like classes people would invite to dungeons, right? Like there's just like a thing that people see and then they hear about and they're like, oh, we got to invite this thing. And like even when the game is more balanced and the difference between first and second of like comps is different, you still see people gravitate towards getting the best thing. And
I don't think that's
disagree with that
entirely true. Yeah, I
wholeheartedly.
kind of disagree. Yeah,
Okay.
because like I think the best examples right now is Red Paladin. Red Paladin is not a good spec, but it's extremely popular in pugs, and people just love Red Paladins.
Red's
And then we
a
look at like
fine
season
spec.
1, for example.
right? What
Yeah,
do you
but
mean?
it's not the best.
It is not. It is nowhere near fine. Red is garbage. Like I'm sorry, but like if you think Red is good right now compared to the good specs, like if you should compare a Red to Shadow Priest or Mage or AUG, it is fucking night and day. I'm talking like I would not invite a red paladin whatsoever. But I'm just talking strictly like fucking meta focused, god comp, playing at the highest level. Like that's what I'm talking about, right? But obviously for pugs, in the pug scenario, red is amazing. It's so tanky. It does a lot of damage. It brings crazy good utility. It brings battle res. Like it just goes to show that like people at the lower level don't necessarily care as much about what like fucking pops off in MDI, whatever. Because like you look at MDI too, right? Like there was a season where Feral was good. Nobody played Feral in pugs. Like nobody batted an eye in Feral. Like remember season 1, everyone was playing Feral in MDI.
Well, not always
So-
MDI. I'm referring more to like the Windwalker and like the like triple rogue, triple hunter seasons back in BFA.
Well, but those were OP though. Like those were straight up OP. So like
Feral
it made
also
sense
was
that
so
it
close to Moonkin, and I think Moonkin lended itself more towards high key things to where like, oh, I'm not just gonna spec Feral and get Feral trinkets and go Feral. Like Moonkin is close enough, kind of thing.
So I think you guys have two different like categories you're talking about. One is there's just some specs that do better in MDI versus like live, and also in pugs versus pre-planned stuff. Like ret's great because you can just press your CDs on CD and you're never, bad. Whereas mage, you fire off an SKB and then your tank pulls something you weren't expecting or something. It's like it's over for you, right? You're very sad.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. But I think that there are definitely seasons. Like I think Dragonflight season 1, if you were playing any of those top 12 DPS specs, you could reasonably get invited to stuff because people kind of knew like, yeah, these are all good, right? Like these are fine. They see you blasting in them. Are there some group leaders that have watched, not even necessarily MDI, but they've watched like TTV Dorki and they're like, I gotta copy this comp. I'm inviting exactly Dorki's comp, right? And like, I'm only playing that one. Like, yeah, there are always going to be idiots, right? But those people are idiots in season 1. In season 2, they're enlightened geniuses because they're only inviting the god comp and they're going to have like 3 levels easier keys as a result. And
I think
that is a very important variable for Blizzard to balance. Like, if Blizzard keeps it such that the best specs are only half a key level better than the middle of the pack, then some pug leaders are going to be stupid, sure, but the majority of them I think are going to be chill and are going to be, if they're finding success with everything, then they'll invite everything.
I think you see an overrepresentation of those people in Twitch chats when you bring stuff like this up, because a lot of people like scapegoat that as the reason they never get invited to keys. Right.
Certainly true.
Yeah,
because
if
not
you're
just Twitch chat as well, like YouTube comments are huge.
Yeah, because
full of
people in my chat at least will always be like, oh, what do you mean people in 15s don't only invite the meta? Of course they do, which is like kind of the argument I was making, but you guys are saying that happens actually way, way, way less. It's just that gets scapegoated a lot.
Well, I will say I think the meta gets reinforced not just because of the specs themselves, like in terms of the damage they're doing, survivability, but also in terms of the routes you do. And one thing that I think people don't appreciate until they've played like God Comp and then tried to play something else is that you start finding a homogenization of routes as the season progresses. Like teams start coming up with new stuff, and then other teams are watching their Twitch streams, so they're like, oh, yo, they were doing this one pull, it's sick, but we got to have like this CC. You got to be able to sleepwalk the mob out, or you got to be able to have sigil for this, like fear bomb skip kind of shit. And as you start doing those routes, you get these very technical pulls, like things that are like really nice, but they require a very specific combination of CCs. And you start leaning on those CCs to be able to do these routes. And you realize if you try to bring anything else, you're like, shit, we can't do that pull anymore. Regardless of whether another spec is doing more damage or not, it's like, dude, the time we save from doing the pulls that we're used to doing, way too good to swap out other specs and relearn this dungeon. It's not worth it. We're just going to keep playing God Comp because we know exactly how to do the route. We've practiced it. I'm not trying to bring different shit every key and relearn the key every fucking time. It's just not worth it. I don't have enough time in the day to do that. And so just the familiarity of these 5 specs, knowing that you're going to get these CCs, these stops, and how they all fit together. And when you're pugging, especially like in pre-mades, it's one thing, but pugging, especially when you don't have time before the key starts to walk through, okay, you're going to kick this, I'm going to stop this. You just know you've all watched each other, or you've all watched the same streams. You know what the route's going to be without having to discuss it. And you all know what your responsibilities are going to be. And if you bring different specs, nobody knows what the fuck anybody's doing anymore.
Bro, JB, that is so fucking true. Because, like, remember back in BFA, I used to play dog shit non-meta specs, right? Like, I played Unholy DK and Bear Tank. And I'm just watching these other teams do these, like, pulls and stuff. And I'm like, man, we can't even do that. Like, it's like we literally cannot do some of these pulls because like we either don't have the damage to kill it in time, we don't have the specific CCs, or like I don't have spell reflect, or just like so many different variables, right? That you don't have compared to the god comp or the good specs or what everyone plays, and you just can't pull off these pulls or do these specific bosses the same way they do it. And I think the most recent thing that where I felt that was in Brackenhide. In Brackenhide, if you don't have a Shadow Priest, it is awful. Like you gotta fight all those packs in the beginning. There's no like mind soothing and opening all the cages, and like you have your Shadow Priest doing the fade open cages. That shit fucking stinks. Cause like sometimes when I'm just playing with my friends and they're playing like Destro Lock, or they're just playing whatever they want for fun, right? Like I'm just doing friend keys. It feels so much different from playing an actual god comp.
100%. I think that is a big part of the like in a season like Dragonflight Season 1, there's a lot of different groups playing a lot of different stuff, and so you have like good route creators, good groups that are figuring out like what does Prot Paladin Algathar Academy look like, right? What does Vengeance Demon Hunter Algathar Academy look like? What does Prot Warrior Algathar Academy look like? And you kind of learn, and you can go watch somebody. But this season, if you're like, hey, what does Prot Warrior look like in this dungeon? Like your answers are, well, I guess you can watch TV, or you can, not watch anybody, right? And there's like 400 Vengeance Demon Hunter tanks you can go watch, and so yeah, there's like that is like a huge feedback cycle where the fact that once one tank or one DPS spec is dominant enough that it, like all the content creators are playing it, and there's not a lot of content creators of the other stuff. All the big groups are playing it, and there's not a lot of big groups of the other stuff. Then yeah, it's like it makes it even harder. And now you're having to fight an uphill battle where you're coming in as Prot Warrior and you're like, okay, before we start this key, here are the 3 mobs that if you kick, I'm gonna scream, right? Like here's these other things, and here are the Vengeance Demon Hunter pulls we can't do, and that's like, I don't know, that's a huge extra barrier to being off meta whenever. But the thing that precipitates that is at the start of the season, right? Like Vengeance Demon Hunter is OP enough that there's nobody playing the other stuff at the high end, and that makes it trickle down to the mid and low end with those kind of strats. I think Mind Soothe is a big offender for this as well. I think Mind Soothe is a huge, like, ever since season 2, there's just so many dungeons where it's like, okay, well, this dungeon we have to pull these awful mobs if we don't have Mind Soothe.
It's even more than what Rogue, like I feel like that's what Shroud used to be.
Yeah, 100%.
And now it's just like better Shroud. Yeah, that's an issue. I have a question for all of you guys. I want to start with JB. So we're going to focus on both parts of this, the new Kiss Curse things, and then also the affixes they decided to bring back. But I want you guys to be armchair developers with me for a second. And maybe this can take some time to think too, if any of you guys feel like you want to go first. What would you, in regards to the Kiss Curse affixes, JB, do you think there's something there? Do you think they continue cooking with that? If so, in what direction would you put it? Or do you think that it's just not good? And then in the case where it's not good, do we drop down to 1 affix on keys? Are we a no affix enjoyer? Like where do you think the game should go for Mythic Plus in regards to like the new +4 affixes they just announced today?
Okay, I would like to begin the thought first with an aside and say that I've watched your camera here for the last few minutes. You have a relationship with your microphone that's unlike anything I've ever seen before.
Yes.
You're familiar with it in a way that's profound.
So,
and
do you want to know why? So
sure, yeah.
So specifically, this live PoddyC, where we are not taking Dratnos' perspective, we are taking mine. I have a grounding issue with my mic, and if I don't hold it, there's a audible static the entire episode. So I have to hold it with at least something at all times, or else you will just hear this really annoying background static, and I don't want Fronk to yell at me. So
how's there no handling noise?
What's up?
I'm surprised there's no like handling noise of usually like normally if I'm like moving my shit around, I'm sure you can like hear shit, right?
I don't know.
Not really.
It just
maybe not. Yeah.
Most mics like you can't really hear. How about this? If I'm moving this, can you guys hear while I'm doing that?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I guess depends on. Yeah. No? Oh, mine's squeaking like a motherfucker.
I don't know. It doesn't make any sound. But yeah, I do. Okay. I am very close with my mic. But what about the Mythic Plus question, Mr. Mr. JB?
Armchair developer. Well, first I'd like to preface by saying that I recognize that a lot of times my opinions do not hold a lot of sway with the broader community. Things that I would like to see from Mythic Plus oftentimes they're not popular with the masses. So
That's
I
called
recognize
based.
that. I recognize that, and I will say that so that people in chat don't get really pissed and think that I am actually suggesting that these things happen, because I know that the things I would like to see are not necessarily the most popular.
JB's about to rip a hot one.
Personally, I'd like them to delete affixes, at least for a season, just see how that feels.
Wait, how? Okay, that's
that
not
is-
a hot
that
take.
is
What
the
fuck?
most-
It's not a hot take. I'm just saying I
Alright,
know that there are a lot of
okay.
people that would not necessarily think that that's good. I'd like to see them delete affix. If they don't delete affixes and they want to go with something that's not, or they want to go with affixes, I would prefer just Kiss, no curse. There's a reason it's called curse. I know Ian, when he said his thing about like affixes are supposed to make the keys harder, and it's like, okay, but like let's imagine a universe where they didn't. Let's imagine a universe where affixes were invented to make the keys more fun, not shittier. There's not a single affix on keys right now that you look forward to for the sake of that affix. There are weeks you look forward to because they're easier, less of a pain in the ass. But it's every week is basically like being asked, do you want to get punched like in the face or the balls? And it's like, I really don't want to get punched in the face, but I guess it beats getting punched in the balls. So like face punch week, let's go. And imagine if there was a week where you didn't get punched in any fucking part of your body at all. And that's what I'm advocating for, is like, I don't want to have to pick between getting punched in the face or the balls. I want to not get
That's
punched at
basically
all.
doing M+.
Yeah,
You're
and
just getting punished the entire time.
so I guess I'd prefer no affixes, and if for no reason other than the fact that that's like the easiest thing to do, that doesn't even require me to trust Blizzard. I don't even have to trust that they're going to come up with good affixes. I know what the result is. The affixes are all gone, and we just do the dungeons as they are, and the dungeons get more difficult as you go up in level.
What are you the most
Would you
scared
have said
of?
the same about seasonal affixes?
Yes. For the most part, I'm not a fan of seasonal affixes. There have been a couple that have been good. Most of them I could still do without.
Okay, what are your concerns? So, like, okay, let's say you want to at least try it for a season. You prefaced this at the beginning of that. What do you think the downsides are with that potentially if we were to try absolutely no affixes on keys, just the keystone leveling up and the infinite difficulty from that?
I mean, I guess people would get bored, like, or at least the things I've heard people say is they think that would be boring. Personally, I don't think they would get bored by it, or if they were going to get bored by that, they were the type of person that was going to get bored from doing Mythic Plus anyway, regardless of how many affixes you put on it. It was just not going to be content that you engaged with very long term. You were going to do it to level up your character at the start of the season, and you were going to move on, whether or not there were affixes on the key.
Jesus, that is based.
That's the only downside I can think of.
Okay, so JB's take is, do you guys have anything else on?
I got some cooks.
All right, what's your cook? So this was this
right.
originally, this was about the like +4 stuff, how they would make that better, what
Yeah.
direction you go? Okay, what would you do?
Here's some +4 affixes. Pride as. You guys remember Pride as? Make
Yep.
that an affix. Bang, you've got
What does that mean?
on the players. You just get a shield a Pride as shield that refreshes every 30 seconds.
Okay.
That sound fun? Cool. Cephas' Secret. That's another Legion Legendary. We could just put those 2 Legion Legendaries and make them affixes. And then, everybody could wear them in Legion if you wanted. And now you've got a week where you've just got them on your character. And, Cephas week, people are setting up their interrupts or their suns or whatever to line up with when they want things.
Oh,
or-
okay, but here's the
Cool.
Blizzard way of thinking things. Because we have Pride as and Cephus now we have to make the mobs cast way more often, and they have like an extra mechanic because you
Yeah.
have all these things helping you. So
I mean, okay,
have to make the
Max is
dungeons
asking
more complicated.
he's-
Yeah, I'm not
he
asking
wants me to
Blizzard.
suggest
Dratnos
what,
is Blizzard. Yep.
what dessert we're gonna have, and you're telling me, well, you're gonna have to shit afterwards. Like, I know, but
yeah.
I'm still talking about what dessert I want.
Okay.
How about this as well? Whenever you kill a mob, you get a 2% movement speed increase, stacking up to 20%, and it lasts for like 45 seconds. And it falls off if you don't kill anything for 45 seconds. Doesn't that sound kind of fun? You're zooming around a little bit. Not too much. It's not absurd. It's 20% movement speed. You got a little, wind in your sails. You're moving. It's kind of a fun week. You log in that week and you're like, oh, cool. Tailwind week, right? Like, that's fun. And then you're moving around a little bit more. It doesn't do too much. You don't have to min-max it if you don't want to. You can if you do want to, and you can like try and do the Venthyr Lantern Extendo thing if you want a little bit more movement speed, but you don't have to. It's maybe not worth it. Like, it's just for fun. I don't know. I feel like some affixes like that would be super sick if they were all kind of like of that power level, because obviously you could do much more powerful Kiss Curse with like in the past with seasonals they did with Shrouded and Encrypted, but like those were a lot. You got like 30% primary stat. or secondary set, I guess, out of Shrouded. You got huge buffs off of Encrypted, but what if there was just like little babby bonuses of those types that you could get on some weeks, and never enough to be more than, again, that half key level or whatever worth of advantage over other weeks ever, but I think it'd be fun.
I agree.
Yeah, like I think everyone wants to not get punched in the balls or slapped in the face. But I mean, well, some people do, but that aside.
Yeah, you can't say everybody. We're on Twitch.
Some people might like that, but like we all want like fucking desserts and cookies and shit. The problem is like Mr. Ion just doesn't think so, man. Like Mr. Ion, he's like, oh man, these fucking M+ers, like they have to be punished for doing harder keys. Like you're doing harder keys, you're expecting it to be harder. Like why the fuck is it that if you do a +10, it's easier than a +7? And God damn, man, like why does it have to be a thing in M+?
If they ever, by the way, I think everybody would be fine if there was an affix that they decided was like worth a key level, if they just added an extra key level's worth of scaling when they brought that affix in to like make that not true, right? To make it so that it still get a key level harder when it went up, right? Like they did that with Thundering. It was one of the least stupid things about Thundering, which admittedly is a low bar, but it was that Thundering like gave a little bit of extra health to the dungeon because, and I think their logic here was this compensates for the extra damage you're going to get. Now it didn't. Thundering just didn't give you actually that much damage benefit over the course of a key because it was pretty low uptime and you had to go and actually find your partner. So it was less than that 5% health that they added to the key, but they could just do that as well. That tech exists. If there's ever an affix that they think makes a key like 2% easier, it can just come with 2% more health on the mobs. Like that's easy.
Yeah, I would say that's like a bit of a scary thought too, just because of like how they've
might they misuse it? Maybe.
Yeah, because like how this season, or well, I guess not even this season, like a lot of this expansion has mostly been about bad scaling, where they just scale damage way too high, and we're at that state where you're doing a fucking +15 key and you're getting one shot and you're having to worry about rotating your defensives perfectly. There's definitely a huge concern where we're not worrying about the timer as much and you're just running into a different type of wall.
Okay. So again, JB's is Scorched Earth, no affixes. That's my cook, right? That's his cook. Dratnos is, well, maybe we have a little bit of fun here, and this is what we do on those. What about specifically the like bucket of harder affixes? So you mentioned that as like your +4s. Those are the ones you get right away. They're not too bad. Either Dorki or Dratnos, or I guess JB, if you want to go on the, okay, affixes are going to stay, what do we do? What would you guys rather see them do with the +7 bucket right now? Not Tyrannical Fortified, not the weird-ass little Kiss Curse things they're doing, but specifically the idea of either Raging, Bursting, Bolstering, or Sanguine will be on your key at all times.
I think those are the ones that actually have to go. Because like I actually don't mind the level 4 affixes by themselves as much. It's really the level 7 ones that just make me agonize.
Would you rather see them replaced with like
Sanguine's so bad?
Like, I mean, for me,
I would rather see like Afflicted, Incorp, Entangling.
Yeah, that's what I said today. Is like, dude, I just like Storming has its problems, but like just replace those 4 that they actually have in the game with the ones that they decided to remove today, and that's immediately better, right? So that was really weird to see.
Yeah, this update was actually really close to being of net positive if they would have just done the correct +7 spring cleaning. Like if they would have gotten rid of Bolstering and Sanguine and Raging and maybe like Afflicted and Incorp, and then just kept like Spiteful, Storming, Volcanic, and Entangling, that would have immediately been like, oh fuck yeah. Even the +4 stuff, I'm willing to give that a shot, like the +4 stuff. I don't have an immediate opinion on that. I'm willing to play around. It could be good, could be bad, could be unimpactful. I don't know. But I don't have a strong reaction to the +4 stuff. The +7 stuff though is like, Jesus, like you got rid of a bunch of stuff, and if you'd have just if that had been the headline, Blizzard scraps a bunch of the +7 affixes, it'd have been like, hell yeah, dude, they're finally getting rid of the bullshit. And then they showed what they kept, and it was like, God damn it, why that?
Yeah, you had an insane tweet today. Do we even say this on the podcast? It's pretty.
What did you say, JB?
Can I say this on the podcast? Dratnos?
Is it that bad?
I don't know, man. I'm not your. Look, you get canceled. That's on you, man. Not me.
It's not me getting
That's on
canceled.
you,
It's
man.
like whether a sponsor wants to give us money for this little podcast, and then they hear that
It's
and they're
gotta be
like,
bad.
"This is
I don't think there's much danger of that happening, regardless.
true." All right, here's what JB said today. Actually, JB, would you like to recite your own tweet today
Actually,
Yeah,
just
JB,
for the
you let it
record,
rip.
in your own
I
words?
actually ran this one by Discord and asked if I would get canceled for tweeting it ahead of time.
Okay.
And they said, actually, they didn't really give an opinion on whether I would get canceled or not. They just said, yeah, you should tweet it.
All right. Recite your tweet.
Okay, so I'm assuming we're talking about the Sanguine tweet
Yep,
here.
that's the one.
I had a different one as well. That was
Yeah,
also...
that one was also a little strange, but let's go with the
Yeah.
Sanguine one.
So anyway, in responding to Wowhead's tweet about how Bowstring Bursting and Sanguine will be returning in War Within, I tweeted, "Does Sanguine possess CCTV footage of a Blizzard exec peeing on consenting sex workers that it uses as blackmail? How does it keep Sanguine? How does it keep coming back?"
It's a, I mean it's not a.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, of all the things to keep coming back, Sanguine has been like the someone has a wild yet fair. Yeah, it's pretty
Sanguine has a
accurate.
Twitter too.
Huh?
Sanguine always tweets about doing top healing. You guys haven't seen?
Yeah, there's a meme Twitter account that's just posting like details meters of Sanguine out healing healers.
Does Sanguine stream? I see. Okay. Yeah, of all the things, man. Yeah, I mean, I know they were saying like we wanted to reduce complexity in dungeons, right? I'm trying to think, what do you think would ever be the worst possible? And keep in mind, not for higher level dungeons. I heard some people saying like, oh, well, if you do the Pride as, only some keys are going to be possible 1 week because you need Pride as to like live certain boss. Like, guys, on like super high end scaling keys, Blizzard and people who do these keys probably know this. Blizzard doesn't give an absolute fuck about that. Like, you're talking like actually the point like 0.05% probably of people who do keys that are one-shotting you and stuff like that. They care about probably where
If they wanted to fix that, they could as well. They could just do the scaling more health than damage
you can
thing.
you
so.
can tell where Blizzard's care lies, and it's where the rewards stop. So in Mythic Plus, like the rewards stop at a +10 where you get the portals, and that's where like 95% plus of people who interact with Mythic Plus stop. So that's their like main focus. They like, what do you think would affect people more stepping into a +10, right? These like level 4 affixes they have, any of the affixes they removed, or stepping into something like Everbloom with bolstering. You're talking about like taking the complexity out of keys. Bro, how much complexity? Bolstering has to add more complexity to any key than any other affix by far, right? Any dungeon mechanic, like it has to be
Unless
the
you're
most.
pulling one pack at a time.
Well, I mean,
Even
this is
Everbloom
where they
does it
talked.
to you
They
regardless,
talked about
right?
their stated goals, and you know, with the way they changed the affixes, and like they said the right things, but the resulting affixes that they kept don't align with that really. And frankly, given the goals they stated, you would have to get rid of every affix, which again I'm in favor of. But if you were actually following through with your stated design goals for affixes, you would have to yeet every fucking affix you have in the +7. The one specifically that I would point to here would be reducing cognitive load on players, because affixes like bolstering, raging, sanguine dramatically increase the cognitive load when you implement those in the keys. Because with bolstering, you have to start paying attention to every mob's health value. You have to start triaging, knowing that like the big mob needs to die faster than the little mobs, or else it's going to turn into a huge Hulk and one-shot our tank. With Sanguine, you have to be actively tracking every fucking nameplate that's in the pack once a Sanguine pool drops to see if any mob is being healed by it. So every nameplate now becomes a different thing you have to be paying attention
Well, and
to.
they specifically stated that that's something they didn't want. They're like, we think that nameplate stuff is like that's where the cognitive load is, but the thing they added that they're keeping is actively making that harder than anything else, right?
Yeah,
I
and
think what they're thinking is they're probably thinking that stuff is like afflicted in Incorp, wherever it's like something that spawns, and it's like, oh, I have to divert my attention to CC this random nameplate or dispel this random little soul thing. I think that's like what they were referring to, and they just completely missed the mark.
I think it's based on the key level, right? Like, if you're doing a +7 key and you're pulling one pack at a time and a mob gets 40% bolstered, like, you probably won't notice it if you're overgearing the content. It's probably fine. But if an afflicted soul goes off and your minus 100% haste, you feel that, right? You feel that. You feel it if you got stunned from entangling. So the affixes that they're removing versus the affixes they're keeping are the affixes. Like raging is another good example. If you're doing a high key and a mob that you need to stop gets raging and you can't stop it, you're gonna feel that. But if you're doing a low key and nobody is stopping anything anyways, it doesn't matter if it's raging or not, right? Raging has no impact in my groups where I don't CC anything. That affix doesn't do anything. So I think that is like the line for.
So basically, fuck you
when
if you're
these
doing high
affixes-
keys.
Right, like the more kind of the affixes that are maybe easier to interact with, right? Like just move out of the entangling, just dispel the afflicted, versus the affixes that are really hard to interact with. Bolstering, right? Like bolstering is a really hard affix to control if you're pulling more than one pack at a time, and in dungeons like Everbloom, even if you are pulling one pack at a time sometimes. But ones that have like one easy piece of counterplay, but you actually have to do that or else something really big and bad happens, are the ones that are more impactful for the groups that aren't doing that counterplay.
Yeah, I think you're completely right about that. Like, I'm pretty sure that's exactly how Blizzard sees it. And I mean, like I've talked with some of the M plus devs before, and that is 100% their philosophy when it comes to a lot of these things. Where it's like, oh well, I mean, like it's fine if these casts go off because like it's not really gonna affect some people who are just doing plus 7s and where like nothing even matters. But I just feel like that's such a bad mentality from Blizzard because like a lot of people want to be able to do higher content, but like at some point people are just like, all right, I'm sick and tired of this shit. Like M plus, whatever. Like I got my shit done. I don't even want to bother anymore. And I feel like it just removes that whole aspiration from players who might want to attempt higher keys or people who might be interested in like trying to do more M plus. And it 100% sucks for people who like are super into M plus. And I'm not just like talking about like people who are doing the very highest keys in the world. People who are doing like plus 15 keys right now. We've seen like an abundant amount of them in LFG. Those guys are the ones who are also suffering, especially if you're plugging.
I have a one more thing to end this. So now you guys are not cooking your own Mythic Plus idea, where because like I think admittedly a lot of the things we suggested I think are things that we would all agree that Blizzard has a less than 1% chance of doing, right? All the things we have suggested so far. I think these are things that are not going to happen. If you are a Blizzard developer and you're writing a post next week that follows closely along with what they've posted this week and seems like it's within reason to change, if you were that Blizzard developer, what would be the first thing you target about this and what would your change be? So somewhat realistic.
So we make like a change to what they've already posted, but like a small one?
Like the most realistic good change that could come in?
Correct, yeah. What is a change you would suggest about this that you would actually believe your eyes if you read it on your screen next week?
They just change which affixes are being swapped in versus out.
That's
like
what I
do the
think.
thing that JB said of which, because they did that before with like explosive during a PTR season where it was like, hey, we're reworking explosive. All right, never mind, we're getting rid of explosive.
Wait, so you guys mean like given entangling, volcanic, and corp?
Yeah, exactly. Like swap out bolstering, raging, and the other one on that row that I don't like.
That sounds huge. Like, dude, just imagine that. Imagine Mythic Plus with no more raging, bolstering, or sanguine. That would be just alone is like huge quality of life, right? Like
that would be fucking big plus.
So yeah, maybe that's the take. Do we have a little? Did Fronk prepare a little Patreon one for us while JB's here?
Did Fronk do something useful?
Let's see. Guessing
Let's
no.
There's no way he did
Let's
anything
see.
useful. What the hell?
Let's see if we can think just from our historical evidence what the answer to that one might be.
Did Fronk?
He did not.
Get us
He hopes we all die, by the way.
Oh, he actually typed that. That is insane.
Wow.
I mean, we don't have to do one. It's fine.
That is crazy.
This is a little emergency pod anyway. Just a little extra content for the boys.
All right, well, do you guys want to talk about the release date, by the way, or?
Oh yeah, except we don't actually know what they're gonna do yet. I guess like we know the date that it comes out, and we know when season 1 starts. But I'll post a picture in Discord so you guys can look at it, and then I'll put it on stream so they can see it. But we have like, as far as I know, we have 2 options for how this expansion release will go. And let me post those to you now. And I'm interested to see what you guys think it will be. It is in what channel is JB in here?
Production.
He's in production. Okay.
Yeah.
So those are, I believe, there used to be a few other options I had listed here, but these are the options now. Week 1 and week 2 are walk-in heroic dungeons. That hasn't been confirmed. I think they said heroic will come out with the season, and they said it's a queuable experience, but also there was something data mined where like you won't be able to queue for them in the first 2 weeks. So I'm assuming you're gonna be able to walk into them like old Mythic Zeros. But looking past that, option A is obvious. Option B is what we've always had, which is what used to happen was Mythic plus gear was capped at a +6 or 7. And then you could do heroic raid, and then the next week when Mythic came out, it was uncapped Mythic plus. But now new Mythic Zeros are higher than what the old cap used to be. So the scenario now would be Mythic Zero and heroic raid, and then Mythic plus uncapped. Or for the first time ever, they would have just uncapped Mythic plus out of the gate with heroic, which is kind of what I hope they do. But what do you guys think will happen here? What's your guess?
My money's on option B. That
Yeah, it's
seems
gotta be option B.
More consistent with what they've done in the past. Yeah.
It does feel like B too, yeah.
Option A will have a full-blown meltdown by Raiders, I think.
God damn.
Well, I
Raiders. Wait,
think-
actually, yeah.
I think-
Wait, hold on.
I think
While
option
we're
A
talking
would.
about Raiders.
Well, before the Raider thing,
Okay,
like
finish
I
your
think
thought, yeah.
we would like option. Well, I mean, like I think pretty sure we would want option. I think if you don't have a job or you can take off of that week, option A sounds good. But if you have anything else to do besides play WoW, option A sounds extremely stressful. Is the way I'd probably look at it.
Yeah, although option B is the one where I'm looking at it and I'm like, maybe we're adding an extra alt requirement here, because, like, what else are we doing with our time that week?
Yeah.
Yeah, going back to the whole Raider thought, like before we continue this, I just realized there's some bias here, man. We just went on talking about how like, oh, you know, fuck people who care about pushing M plus, like they don't matter, you know.
That's
like,
right.
That's right, but then Blizzard gives so much a fuck about mythic rating, where like nobody does that shit. Like so much less people do mythic rating than push high keys. Yet somehow,
that's not true.
Rating is like the premier content. Yo, we gotta make sure we balance it perfectly. We gotta make sure every week we instantly hotfix and like, oh, someone's abusing a bug. Warning. Wait. Alarm going off. We gotta fix raid ASAP. Meanwhile, in fucking M plus, some shit's been bugged for like the past 10 years. They brought back the dungeon. It's like, oh wait, this was bugged. Oh, maybe we should fix it. What do you think? Like, what the fuck is going on, man? We're just biased out. We're saying like, oh, who gives a shit about M plus, man? Like, who people?
Well, none of us
past
are.
plus 10s?
None
Oh,
of us are
whatever.
saying what Blizzard should care about or shouldn't. We're saying what Blizzard does or doesn't care about. Whether there's like a, like, oh well, they care more about the top whatever percent of raiders versus that of Mythic Plus. I think that's pretty accurate. Like whether they should or shouldn't isn't the case. Also, the whole like, you think more people push like top 0.1% of keys, like title keys,
I'm
than
just talking
people who
past
cutting
plus
edge
10s,
raid?
right?
That is
Oh, they are
absolutely false. Like that is not
There
true
are
at all.
100% more people doing plus 10s than mythic rating.
No, well, plus 10s is a totally different. You said high Mythic Plus, right?
Yeah, that's
Well,
how
you're
Mythic
saying
plus.
the plus 10s aren't high?
Yeah, what the hell
Come
are you
on.
saying?
Oh,
Like, people,
okay.
Plus
So
10
This is
is
so
basically
messed
the
up.
amount of people that do.
Elitist out here. I
Well,
can't
I would
believe
also
this.
If you're doing
say
like
that
anywhere from a 10 to a 20, you're pushing keys.
if you're doing a 10, I would say a lot more people do 10s than Mythic, but also I would also say that the difficulty there like directly scales, right? Like doing all of your plus 10s is significantly easier than like clearing all of Mythic raid. So
What
that
about
would add up.
LeBron versus Jordan?
God damn it, JP.
Which one is the keys and which one is the raid?
Yep. Okay, wait. What were we talking about? This? Oh
Anyways.
yeah, I just wanted to hear yours. So you
Yeah,
guys
we're
all
talking
think
about
you guys
the
all think
race
it's option B.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's option B. I think option A would be. I think it would cause a lot of angst that Blizzard doesn't want to deal with.
Yep, you're probably right.
All right.
Well, but like, what do you guys think about the release date? Because they actually said a lot. You guys saw the whole rate testing thing, right?
Apparently,
It's
they
actually
changed it
crazy
since we
this time.
started this podcast. So I know
What the
that
hell?
Oh, did
some
they? I didn't
feedback
see
was
the
given
change.
to them, not by me or us, but the feedback was raid testing schedule is like crazy insane, 4 hours of testing in a row, and then also I believe all of the mythics were during TGP time trials. And then a response to that was like, okay, we'll look at that. So I don't know if it, but apparently someone in my chat said new update to raid testing schedule during this podcast, and I haven't had a chance to actually read it yet, but it was insane before.
Okay, yeah, they did.
You know what it's gonna be? They're like, somebody's gonna be like, they did raid testing during TGP time trials, right? And they'd be like, hold on, we have an update. We are moving TGP time trials so that the raiders can have their testing.
That would be good. Let me see if I can. Yeah, 45
I mean,
minutes
it's
ago.
a problem for us, man. It is a major fucking problem. When we saw this during practice, I'm like, oh fuck, man. Like, this is during time trials and like during the next 2 weeks of practice.
So
Wait,
it
what did
looks
it
like just browsing over it briefly, it looks like they spread out the testing by a lot. I don't know if they.
It's still on the same days, but like now there's less per day and there's extra days at the end.
Yeah, yeah.
Like an extra week. Yeah, that's good.
It's good that they're
Yeah, they
focusing on
crammed like
raiders.
what, like 4 bosses per day or some shit like that, right?
Yeah, it was originally I think 4 4 4 4, and now it's like 3 3 3 3 2 2 2.
That's crazy.
Yeah, before it was like speedrunning testing. They had never had a schedule like that before, which maybe that's actually even another thing is like, is this like the closest to an expansion beta has been?
Yeah, they literally announced beta and the release date on the same week, which has never happened before, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just making stuff up. I don't actually know if that's true, but I could see that.
I'm making shit up too, but like that's what I've been hearing.
Isn't it going to be a 2-month beta? So it's June to August. It's going to be like less than 2.5 months of beta total. That's insane, right? That's like way shorter.
But if they're doing this new model of trying to knock it out like every 18 months or something, you just can't have like fucking 6 months of beta every time. You'll just be immediately jumping into beta for the next expansion.
I have heard a lot of people say that 18-month thing might just be hard made up. Like that's something that they were like, we want to have all these expansions done by 2030, right? And then everyone's like, well, the only thing that makes sense is 18-month expansions. But I don't even know if that's necessarily true or if Blizzard is like hard committed to that. Because like if the last expansion is like finishing in the year 2030, they can just do 2-year cycles, right? Like for example, it would really surprise me if, next expansion would be coming out in February. Is that right? That's what an 18-month expansion would look like, right? 6 months earlier, so it would be a February expansion. That just sounds impossible until that's actually the case.
I mean, where did 18 months come from, right? That's
not from them, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I mean, it's also a little bit worrying with how buggy the most recent stuff have been, like Mop Remix, Cataclysm, Season 4 release.
Yeah,
Okay,
I've seen
they're
some
pushing a
posts about this
But here's the
as
thing.
well.
Mop Remix is interesting because of the bugs. Like
yeah,
that's
let's talk about Mop
like-
Remix again. Let's just get into
That's
it.
right.
I would not have given a single shit about Mop Remix. Like, not in a bad way. It's just not the kind of content I would engage with in WoW, and it probably would have existed, and I would have not engaged with it at all. But then I started seeing how everything was broken, and it was 10 times funny. And I started actually paying attention to Mop Remix because of how fucked up it was. And
But were you playing it?
I actually did play it for a little bit, and I actually stopped playing it because of how buggy it was, because I was like, I'm never catching up to these nerds with cloaks, so fuck this shit. But that Mop Remix is the closest to early MMO days. Like, that had nostalgia for
That's true.
MMOs from the 2000s, from back when an MMO would come out and it would be broken as fuck, and you would have no idea how anything was working, because however it was supposed to work was not how it actually worked. And so the game was basically just walking around trying to figure out ways to like maximize stuff. And it's been a long time since an MMO had that feel to it, because developers so aggressively test all their shit now that they iron most of that out. And you only get that kind of stuff when a developer like YOLOs and just sends it without testing. And nobody does that anymore. And Mop Remix did that, and it was like, oh my god, this actually reminds me of what it was like playing MMOs back in like 2004 when nothing worked the way it was supposed to. And that's fun in its own way.
Yeah, and you have interesting interactions too that were like not usually intended. I would say PvP feels that way in the beginning of expansions, like beginning of Shadowlands, when you're just going out there and just like convoking and just deleting people. Like, that is exciting as hell. Like,
Isn't
even beginning of BFA.
Isn't that just like a difference in time though? Like I feel like back then games it was accepted for things to just be broken, and you just kind of figured it out and rolled with the punches, and now things have to be perfect, right? Like when you release a game, everything has to work, or else it's like a huge huge drama. Game broken, that can't be the case. Perfect balance, as it like, right? Like, was Classic and BC balanced? Like, fuck no, right? Like that shit was insane, but like it was 2005, so no one cared. Same thing all the way through for a long time in WoW.
The Diablo 4 had that on launch. You know how like some stuff were like giga broken and like people loved it, but Blizzard just,
yeah, but a lot of people play that as like a
nerfing them,
single
nerfing
player
them.
game, so how strong another class is kind of completely irrelevant, right? Like whether you can go
true,
a little bit higher in greater risk, like who fucking cares, right? But like that's actually changed the way they designed legendaries now too, right? Like before, like legendaries were like insanely hard to acquire, and they were incredibly powerful, and if you had one, you were a god, and because of that, like that thing will mean more to you than anything else. You'll remember where you were for the rest of your life when you looted like warglaives or whatever. But now these like legendaries that we have nowadays, that would never work because the game has to be balanced and the game has to be tuned. And if that class is a legendary, then it's just the best class in the game, and that can't happen because you can't have a meta, and you need like this class to like all the plate classes in season 3 were tuned around having a two-handed weapon, even though it took them like 3 months to get it. But then it turns into this bad luck protection legendary you're eventually guaranteed to get, which now has no value to you and doesn't even feel legendary because it's just like this, you know what I'm saying? Like the difference in design philosophies over the years, stuff that used to work versus stuff that works now. Think about like Scarab Lord, which is like looked back on with nostalgia, but like if you had to pick one person in your server, how much drama there would be now. Terragosa and Firelands or Shadowmourne, like having to pick a person instead of just it being guaranteed for everyone. So it's sad. I feel like games nowadays, everything has to be, it's less like, I don't know, I'm actually interested what you guys think about that, just that whole thing in
I think
general.
people actually said that was what was great about SOD Phase 1. Like a lot of stuff were like super broken and there were a lot of like quirky shit, and I think a lot of people love that about the first phase of Season 1 or Season of Discovery.
Yeah, I guess my thing is I don't think that it's particularly likely that like War Within is going to be super buggy because I don't think it's good evidence that Mop Remix was buggy means that War Within is going to be buggy. Like I think that's those two are like pretty different levels of how much they care about these things not being buggy when they come out, and I think that's probably like as likely as, you know, Dragonflight was to be super buggy, which it had its bugs, but it wasn't awful buggy. I think they'll be the same.
Do you guys think they could do that? How do you think that would work in today's day and age where there is a legendary for this patch, and it's only for a few specs, but it's so fucking rare that like you will maybe have like 1 or 2 people on your friends list in the entire season who even loot one of these things, and because of its rarity, it's also insane. And if you bring those players to your keys, and if they're not brain dead, they're going to beat every other class in the game, like a true legendary, like, you know, like that has value to that word. Wouldn't that just drive people crazy in today's day and age? Then it would be required. Then no invite if no legendary, you know, that kind of shit.
Yeah, I would buy
But
their
if
account.
that few people, holy shit. Yeah, but if that few people have it, then like, you know, nobody's gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna invite you only if you have legendary.
The top Radar.io score in the world, if you just don't have someone in your main group that has legendary, you just are cooked. That's like -1 key level.
Yeah, but I mean, chances are like a lot of non-pushing type of players would have it.
I don't know. I think that those accounts would mysteriously end up in the hands of people that wanted to use them.
Yeah.
Guys,
Especially the Chinese accounts.
I screen grabbed. I can't believe I just said screen grabbed. I sound like I'm 100 years old, but I was watching a Tettles video earlier, and I want to hear your all's opinion on this. This happened during a pause, and I think it's the most Rizzy face I've ever seen in my life. I'm putting it in the production channel. This was a Tettles pause. Doesn't it look like he's risen you the fuck up?
Okay, but if I were to pause at any point in the last hour and a half,
No,
where
don't talk
you're
about my
not
mic
speaking,
again.
What you're doing with your mic is 10 times rizzier than that.
No fucking way, man.
Do you have the 7TV emote, Riz?
Bro, this needs to be a emote. This is insane. This looks like Tettle like talking to someone at a bar, and he's like, I'm gonna look so fucking sick right now.
It's this emote right here.
Oh no, I haven't seen that, dude. I kind of want that, but it's just the Tettles version. Tettles is actually doing that. All right, that's all I have for today, though.
All right.
Is that
On that note, I guess we end the PoddyC special episode here.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, JB.
Okay, thanks for having me, guys.
Always a pleasure.
Yep. Love your tweets, man.
Yep.
Odd bye, JB.
Yep.
Yep. Banger tweets. Should you guys follow JB's Twitter?
Oh yeah, and his Twitch and stuff.
Oh,
as well,
Frank.
ready?
Frank will actually handle
don't
all of
follow
that.
the
his
links.
Twitch and
He'll
stuff.
put the links.
Yeah. Don't follow my fucking Twitter. I make no money from that shit. Follow my Twitch, please, God.
Oh, okay. I was about to say.
There we go.
opposite.
That's
Do
good.
people think that people make money on Twitter? It's like comically low amounts of like you could every single tweet you have could be minimum 1,000 likes or something, and you would make pennies from Twitter. It's irrelevant. Yeah,
How many pennies have you guys made?
that's a good
I
question.
think I've made like $75 from Twitter. So,
How do you
God
check?
Damn, this is how you know he's a tweet lord.
How do you check?
there's like a revenue tab in your Twitter, I think.
Monetization.
Yeah.
Ads, revenue sharing.
I don't have Twitter Blue.
I'm not even
All,
eligible.
all of my likes are all natty on my tweets. It's pretty impressive.
Wait, how do I get eligible for getting paid?
You have to buy Twitter Blue.
I don't even know how you.
Oh yeah, they started doing a thing where they want you
I
to
gotta
submit
pay them to get
ID
paid.
Yeah.
verification. They want
That's
you to
right.
send you your fucking driver's license to get
Bro,
paid
this is a
$15.
scam.
Dude, I can't find it. I have no idea how to find. Maybe I'm not making money on Twitter anymore. I have no idea.
Well, did you pay them?
I also I don't have Twitter Blue now.
Oh yeah, you gotta pay them to get paid.
I think you have to. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be. That's how they get
Well, I used to have Twitter Blue. I don't
It's-
have it anymore. I kept my check mark though. Quick shout out. I literally unsubscribed from Twitter Blue because it's an awful look, and then I still have
You know
a
you
check
can
mark.
just hide that, right? Or no, I don't think you can anymore. They let you hide it for a while, and then they realized a lot of people were hiding it, and they were like,
My thing says
look good.
this account verified, and it says verified since June 2020, and I do not have Twitter Blue. And that's from before when Twitter Blue was a thing. So I don't know if they eventually, because they took them away at some point, but I guess they added them back. Or
Yeah. Maybe if you had Blue when they took away the legacies, your legacy one was like under the. It was like hidden.
holy shit, I'm gonna
Protected.
unsub from this.
let's let
Yeah.
go. But now I look
Wait, so
like
we
a
have
now I look like an
more?
Elon simp. Let's get it.
We have more days of raid testing.
That's right. Log in.
Yeah, that was what
God
that was
damn,
the
we only got
change.
fucking practice, man. Oh,
Of course. I mean,
my
people complained
God.
about 4 hours per day. They're not just going to not test those bosses, so it just needs to be less
Bro, this
hours,
shit
more
is-
days.
Oh, we're so fucked, man.
It's fine. You don't have anyone who's required to be at raid testing on your team, right?
Right.
Wait, who's
Yeah,
on your
I'm
team
telling you
again?
that. Fucking Smacked, Yips, and Goop, your goddamn tank and
Oh, yep.
2 DPS.
Yep, those guys will be at raid testing for sure. So, good luck, buddy. Yep, THD in chat. If you are mad about testing times and you do TGP, you brought this on yourself. Don't do TGP. Don't do keys. Mythic Plus is trash. Holy shit.
That's pretty based.
All right. Good
All right.
shout. Good conversation, boys.
Yep.
Yep.
GG.
Yep, GG's.
GG's.
Yep, see you later.